onward is completely mature, so the speed of the information in a kid under 10 will be actually the same as an adult. When you are talking about a 4-year-old, for instance, the speed is really much lower, so you need to wait a little bit sometimes for the kid to have some more maturation to learn certain techniques, like the techniques in tennis. Also, the signal quality will increase, and that signal quality will increase because of a process called myelination, which is a process that will be also complete close to 20 years old. Is basically an isolation of the nerves that will permit a bigger clarity in the signal impulse, and will give a greater precision to the transmission of all the signals, basically the way we sense the world around us, and also the commands that the brain gives to the body for moving. Basically, coordination is the capability of the brain to control your body. Another important situation that changes during this stage is the connections to the motor plate, that is, the connections of the nerves to the muscles that permit to control the muscles. The complexity of those connections will increase at this age. What we can say is that the body of the nervous system is very plastic, can change a lot, is very open to stimuli during this period of development, but will lose that plasticity later on. So it's very difficult to improve coordination after puberty. With a kid 13 years old, a young adult 18 years old, it's very difficult to improve coordination because the nervous system will lose this plasticity. So it is actually very, very important to have that stimuli in terms of coordination when they are young. What we know that will increase much the coordination of the young kids is the quantity of stimuli, so doing a lot of sport, doing a lot of movement, and also the diversity of that stimuli. So doing different sports, doing different movements is also very good. As much as you can do it, will improve coordination. Coordination will improve basically motor learning. So if you have a good coordination, you will learn faster. That means also that you will learn with less repetitions. So this is the idea of coordination. This is why kids that have a better coordination normally, or kids that have an exceptional coordination, are normally what we call talented. When we identify a kid as talented, normally is because he will learn much faster than the others. Okay? The first time we present tennis to those kids, they will be able to execute the movements much more in a perfect way, but especially faster. That's why, because they do less repetitions. So, should we at this age bracket start to teach tennis and to specialize the kid in tennis? Of course, we have a lot of stimuli, and tennis is a very demanding sport in terms of coordination because of the use of the racket, because of the speed of the ball. It's very demanding, so probably if we start very early at tennis, probably there will be an increase in coordination. And what we find is that if we do early specialization in tennis, you will get, of course, a greater neural adaptation to the sport. So the kid will be with his nervous system more adapted to the sport, and this is probably good. Also, it will start mastering the technique earlier than other kids, and probably will have a more competitive experience because he can play also earlier. We'll go back to this situation again just to talk a little bit about injuries. This is just interesting to understand, because normally we don't think at this age group the appearance of injury. We don't think that small kids, especially under 10, will have injuries, and actually they do. And if you think about it, you see that kids at this age group, they get hurt all the time. Okay? Normally the thing is the injury is not serious. And it's not serious because they are light, they don't have big body mass, and the movements that they do don't have a very high degree of speed. So you don't have mass, you don't have speed. Normally the energy of the impacts or whatever they do is not really that great. And although they get a little bit hurt, that doesn't seem to be so serious. And normally we think it's normal for kids to get bruised and sometimes to have light sprains, and we don't care about it. But it's important to understand that they really get hurt, and we need to look into this. It's also important to understand that there is some evidence, and this is very important, that when you start early specialization, we have some evidence that this has a link with later on overuse injuries. Okay? So if you start too early with a sport, of course this creates a lot of pressure on muscles, tendons and joints, and of course there is some linkage, especially nowadays in Spanish tennis. They're starting to have a lot of injuries, especially injuries on the hip, which is normally a joint that has injuries in later stages of the career of the players, but they are having a lot of injuries of this type with players with 16 and 17 years old, which is, of course, too early. Talk a little bit also about emotions. This is important. Normally we don't talk about this, at least it's not normally something that we consider important, but this emotional part is very important for the motivation of the children. This is a particularly good picture because you see normally the emotions that children exhibit when they are in tennis are good or positive emotions. These are some of those emotions, and normally we can see this not only in clubs. In clubs, normally the kids get more experienced. Normally they go to clubs to play tennis because the parents probably play or like the sport. But when you go to a school, it's a different situation. Kids in school normally don't have contact with tennis, at least not in Portugal. But in most of the countries they don't have direct contact with tennis. And when you go to a school and start to show and do exercises, just having a racket in the hand will normally promote that the kids will smile and will feel good. This is a characteristic of our sport. I was hearing in some presentations about this negative emotion, especially fear. Fear is one of the emotions that players feel more often.
I'll get what you do when you let me down. I don't care if you're going to play 100%. I'll get you, boy. Cry like that.
This is a coach, actually.
It's all right, buddy. It's all right. Look at this cool stuff you get to wear. I'll help you, okay? It's gonna be fun, big guy. Come on, bud.
Actually, the idea is normally the negative emotions come from adults. Kids normally they face the sport and they think sport is fun, especially a sport like tennis. Remember, the reaction they have normally to the racket, to hitting the ball, the net in the middle. It's a fun game, and if you see them with other racket sports, like badminton for instance, badminton is much easier technically than tennis. And you give two rackets and a shuttle to the kids and they will just play. In the beach it's the same. They use those small rackets and a ball and they will just play. They don't need intervention of adults, and they seem to have fun. They can do that for many hours. Normally the negative, the pressure will come normally from the adults, from the parents for sure, but also from the coaches, from us. But normally, what is the pressure? You have seen some of the presentations today about high competition and high performance, and sometimes we have the idea we need to push them. But we need to remember that they are kids, especially in this age, and fun is a very important emotion and very important to maintain. Just a quick look, interesting look on adults. Is it easier or harder to teach adults? And looking just at those clips, it looks difficult. It's harder to teach adults, and it's harder to teach. It's harder actually to teach adults because they socially are not equipped. It's a question of psychology. They are not equipped to learn, not at least as good. No, it's too funny.